Okay, good evening, Diana and Natalia. Thank you so much for being on time. I hope you are doing great. So we started 10 minutes after the given time because of some time constraints, specifically talking. But the good thing is that you're here, so thank you so much for the attendance in advance and for your participation. I talked to the other people who attended to the first session. I let them know about the um, situation that happened yesterday considering technical issues. So we rescheduled this second session for tonight, but maybe they are not going to be able to make it. So once again, I want to thank you very much for being here. The session is being recorded once again. So let's get started. Before we properly start with the second session, I just want to make sure that everything is working properly in terms of the technical support. Okay, so please do let me know if you can hear me well, if you can see me, and whether you can see the slideshow presentation on Canva. Okay, so let me know, please.
Yes.
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you very much for your confirmation, Diana. So please do remember that you're very welcome to participate, either using the microphone or using the chat. There was a challenge. This challenge was for you, okay, in order to keep track of your emotions and what causes such emotions and your reactions, okay? So we are not going to go into this matter. It was just a challenge for you. We are going to get started right away with our second session on this holistic journey through the emotions realm online workshop. Okay, so this is the agenda for this second session. First, we're going to be talking about nutrition and emotions. Second of all, we're going to be working on exercise and nutrition. Third, we are going to be dealing with nature versus nurture. This is a dichotomy. Number four, the importance of sleep and emotions. And number five, we're going to be talking about philosophy, maybe arts and emotions. All right. So let's continue with this. Okay. Give me just a second. Okay, I just changed it. So I have some important initial questions that I'd like you to answer. Okay. Why is nutrition important for one's mental health, and how is this related to emotions and mood? Which foods or food groups are in charge of regulating or helping regulate the basic emotions? Which mental disorders are directly associated with eating habits and education performance? What about emotions? Okay, so this is the first thing that I would like you to do as part of this second session. I am going to let you the questions in the chat. Okay, please take about 5 minutes, from 5 to 7 minutes to answer these three questions. You can Google this information, or if you have any questions, you can let me know, okay? And in about 5 to 7 minutes, we're going to exchange your answers. You can either use the chat or the microphone. So 5 to 7 minutes for you to answer, and then we will socialize the answers. Let me know if you have any questions though.
Crea tu plan de carrera completamente gratis con esta herramienta de inteligencia artificial. Te haré un par de preguntas y entre más detalladas sea
All right, we've got some answers in the chat already. So Diana, thank you very much. How about Natalia? Have you finished? Or maybe do you need some more time? You let us know, okay? Okay, so as you type, I'm going to read Diana's answers, okay? So the first question once again is, why is nutrition important for one's mental health, and how is this related to emotions and mood? So Diana says, because nutrition provides essential nutrients that support brain function. Okay, yes, perfect. You couldn't have said it better yourself. Thank you very much for this reply. Everything starts, well, somehow everything starts with nutrition. Remember that this is a holistic workshop in order to understand how emotions work from different perspectives. And if we think about the emotional brain, because there is an emotional brain, we do have to consider the fact that nutrition is fundamental for nurturing not only the emotional brain, but also the other brain areas that are in charge of emotion control and emotion regulation, such as the hippocampus, the brain amygdala, and many others. All right. So it is important for us to be knowledgeable on the kind of nutrients, that is to say, the kinds of food that we take on a daily basis that help us activate and regulate such brain areas, which eventually will help us with emotion regulation and emotion control. So thank you very much, Diana, for your reply. Okay, so you shared an Instagram account, Natalia. Let's see what this is all about. Great. So question number 2. Which foods or food groups are in charge of regulating or helping regulate the basic emotions? Remember that in our first session, we were talking about the underlying mechanisms of emotions, and we also talked about 6 or maybe 8 basic emotions depending on the author, okay? So we had happiness, sadness, disgust, anger, fear, and we had one more, okay? So again, which food groups or groups are in charge of regulating or helping regulate the basic emotions? Let's see. Foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids found in fish, for example, blue fish. So we have salmon, we have tuna, we also have sardines. They are a very good source of omega-3 fatty acids. Maybe avocado too, complex carbohydrates, whole grains. All right, so it's important to intake whole grains on a daily basis. Antioxidants such as fruits and vegetables support brain health and can influence emotional well-being. So thank you very much, Diana, for this response. And question number 3 is, which mental disorders are directly associated with eating habits and education performance? What about emotions? So let's see. Poor nutrition can impact cognitive function, concentration, and energy levels. That's true. Various mental disorders, including depression, anxiety disorders, and bipolar disorder, are characterized by significant emotional disturbances and imbalances. Nutrition can play a role in managing these conditions. Yes, for example, some people who are diagnosed with depression, the different types of depression that there exist in the literature, it has been proven that this is caused because the lack of lithium that they intake. And lithium is not easy to find in food. So it has to be given as a part of the medical treatment. And it somehow helps these people who suffer from certain types of depression to regulate the lithium level, and then, serotonin, oxytocin, and the other neurotransmitters that we covered yesterday in the previous session, the one we had on Thursday. And so this depression is not that complicated, of course, after medical checkups and regulation. Great, Diana, thank you very much. Now let's take a look at Natalia's answers. So she says, I think nutrition is important for health in general, body and mind. Yes. because it can lead to better brain. So good nutrition significantly affects our mental health. Yes, it's not only nutrition in terms of the brain, but also nutrition in terms of the whole body. If we have a healthy body, we have a healthy mind, and vice versa, right? If we have a healthy mind, we have a healthy body. That is the reason why the second thing that we're going to be discussing tonight is related with physical exercise, okay, which is very important when it comes to emotional regulation. Um, okay, so sugar, I think for the soul. Desserts, question number 2, which food or foods groups are in charge of regulating or helping regulate the basic emotions? Yes, um, sugar somehow, but especially chocolate, okay? um, Chocolate at a concentration of 80% of cocoa. When chocolate bars have this concentration or this percentage of cocoa, they start to have a positive impact in our emotion balance or our emotion imbalance. So I don't know if you have heard people saying something like, if you're sad, eat chocolate. If you are depressed, eat chocolate. This is true. There is a scientific reason behind this, but not all types of chocolate, okay? It has to be at least 80% of cocoa concentration. And in that case, it will have a positive impact when it comes to regulating emotions. If you're suddenly depressed, then suddenly you're going to start feeling a little bit happier. Yes, dark chocolate. That is to say, 80%, at least 80% of cocoa concentration. Right. Uh, all right. So the third question was, let's go back. Which mental disorders are directly associated with eating habits and education performance? What about emotions? So Natalia says anorexia and bulimia, nervous bulimia, are related to emotions. Because if a person feels fat or thinks he or she is fat, stops eating or vomits. Yes, we have these conditions which are related to mental health. It's misperception of oneself, right? And that's why people stop eating, and that's why people start vomiting. There is one that is nervous bulimia too, and so on. So it is important for us to consider these aspects as well because they are highly related to nutrition. All right, so thank you very much to the both of you. We have answered the initial questions regarding the importance of nutrition and mental health. Okay, now before we continue with the importance of exercise, there is part of a video that I'd like you to watch about the importance of nutrition and the impact it has on people's mental health. Okay, so we are going to watch part of that video. We're not gonna watch the whole video. I am going to share the link with you via chat in case you want to watch it later. Maybe we're gonna watch the first 5 or 7 minutes and then we're going to stop and then we're going to continue with the next section of today's session. All right. Please let me know. Let me check. Let me check. Can you see the YouTube video in this moment?
Yes.
Okay.
We can listen.
Now, okay, let's try with the sound. Let me know if you can hear the video. Sorry.
In 1847.
So can you hear the video?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for your information. So we're gonna watch part of this video and then we're going to continue with the second part of today's session.
a physician by the name of Semmelweis advised that all physicians wash their hands before touching a pregnant woman in order to prevent childbed fever. His research showed that you could reduce the mortality rates from septicemia from 18% down to 2% simply through washing your hands with chlorinated lime. His medical colleagues refused to accept that they themselves were responsible for spreading infection. Semmelweis was ridiculed by his peers, dismissed, and the criticism and backlash broke him down, and he died in an asylum 2 weeks later from septicemia at the age of 47. What I am going to talk about today may sound as radical as hand washing sounded to a mid-19th century doctor, and yet it is equally scientific. It is the simple idea that optimizing nutrition is a safe and viable way to avoid, treat, or lessen mental illness. Nutrition matters. Poor nutrition is a significant and modifiable risk factor for the development of mental illness. According to the 2013 New Zealand Health Survey, the rates of psychiatric illnesses in children doubled over the last 5 years. Internationally, there's been a 3-fold increase in ADHD, a 20-fold increase in autism, and a 40-fold increase in bipolar disorder in children. And this graph here shows there's been a 4-fold increase in the rates of the number of people who are on disability as a direct consequence of an underlying psychiatric illness. The rates of mental illness are on the rise. So how are we dealing with this problem? Currently, our healthcare system operates within a medical model. Now, this means that you would typically be offered psychiatric medications first, followed by psychological therapies and other forms of support. Our reliance on medications as a frontline form of treatment is evident from the increasing rates of prescriptions. For example, in 2012, 500,000 New Zealanders, that's 1/8 of us, had been prescribed an antidepressant. That's 38% higher than 5 years previously. Similarly, the rates of prescriptions for antipsychotics doubled from 2006 to 2011. Given that this medical model is fairly universal across all Western societies, you would rightfully expect that it was working well. And indeed, in some cases, these treatments save lives. And I'm not here to dismiss it altogether. However, if a treatment is truly effective, then shouldn't the rates of disorder and disability as a direct consequence of that illness be decreasing rather than increasing? And that's why we need to consider the role that medications might be playing in some of these outcomes. If we take any class of medication, antipsychotics, anti-anxiety medications, antidepressants, the pattern is the same. In the short term, these treatments are often very effective, but in the long term, they aren't. And in some cases, they're making life worse. If we look at, for example, studies that have been done on ADHD children treated with stimulants or Ritalin, in the short term, they are better and better responders than any other form of treatment. But in the long term, they fare less well than children who were never prescribed these medications. Another study showed that despite our ever-increasing reliance on antidepressants, the recovery rates and relapse rates are no better now than they were 50 years ago prior to the advent of these medications. And children with depression who are treated with antidepressants are 3 times more likely to convert to bipolar disorder than children who were never given these medications. And people who are randomized to stay on their dose of antipsychotic medications are less likely to recover from schizophrenia in the long term than people who had been randomized to a dose reduction or complete elimination of the drug. And I can show you more and more studies all highlighting this same bleak picture. So, pretty depressing.
Screw convention. You've got to stand out from the crowd if you're building a company. Look to start businesses.
Is there another way forward? Almost 2 decades ago, my PhD supervisor at the time, Professor Bonnie Kaplan, told me about some families who were treating themselves with nutrients in southern Alberta, Canada. Now, they had bipolar disorder, psychosis, depression. These are serious conditions, and my education in clinical psychology had taught me that nutrition and diet were of trivial significance for mental health, and that only drugs or psychotherapy could treat these serious conditions. But she and others were publishing preliminary data in the earlier part of the century showing people getting well and staying well. And so I decided to study the nutrients, and that's what I've done for the last decade. In 2009, I received some funding to run a randomized placebo-controlled trial using minerals and vitamins, also known collectively as micronutrients, for the treatment of ADHD in adults. And this study was published in the British Journal of Psychiatry in April of this year, and here's what we found. Within just an 8-week period, twice as many people responded in the micronutrient group compared to placebo. Twice as many people went into remission in their depression in the micronutrient group. Hyperactivity and impulsivity reduced into the normal non-clinical range. And those who were taking the micronutrients were more likely to report that their ADHD symptoms were less impairing and less interfering than in their work and social relationships than people who were on the placebo. And 1 year later, those people who stayed on the micronutrients maintained their changes or showed further improvement, and those who switched to medications or stopped the micronutrients actually showed a worsening of their symptoms. Now, I need to tell you something here, and that is when I say micronutrients, I'm actually referring to a dose higher than what you'd get out of a vitamin pill purchased in the supermarket. In this study, we gave participants up to 15 pills a day with 36 nutrients. So it would be unlikely that if you went and got an over-the-counter supplement, you would unlikely see these positive benefits, both because the dose is lower and the breadth of nutrients is lower. Now, these positive benefits are not confined to a single study. My lab at the University of Canterbury is the Mental Health and Nutrition Research Group, and we've published over 20 papers in medical journals, all documenting the benefits of micronutrients. For example, this study here showed that we could reduce the symptoms of bipolar disorder in children by 50% with a simultaneous reduction in medications. This study here showed that we could reduce rates of probable post-traumatic stress disorder from 65% down to 18% following the Christchurch earthquakes with a 1-month intervention of micronutrients with no change in those not taking the nutrients. Even 1 year later, those people who had received the nutrients were doing better than those who didn't. And we've just replicated these findings in collaboration with researchers at the University of Calgary following the floods of June 2013 in Alberta, Canada. To me, the message is clear that a well-nourished body and brain is better able to withstand ongoing stress and recover from illness. Giving micronutrients in appropriate doses can be an effective and inexpensive public health intervention to improve the mental health of a population following an environmental catastrophe. In my 20-year career...
All right, there you go. Now, if you wish to continue watching the second part of this video, which is highly interesting and I highly recommend it, you have the link in the chat, okay? Because of time constraints, we cannot watch the whole video, but it is clear, given the studies conducted by this researcher who happens to be a PhD, and by checking this with other universities, well-known universities, it is clear that nutrition and micronutrients do play an important role when it comes to dealing with people's mental health, okay? For the time being, we are going to continue with the second part of today's session. Give me just a second. Which deals with the importance of physical activity, the importance of exercise when it comes to emotions regulation. Okay, so let's get going. I want to start by quoting Jean-Jacques Rousseau, okay? And it goes like this. He once said, quote, "A feeble body weakens the mind," okay? "A feeble body weakens the mind." So I have some initial questions for you, as it is usual, and I want us to take a look at these questions. Do you believe exercise and physical education are important for one's emotions? Why? Explain your reasons. Do you exercise? If so, how often? Okay. And again, if so, how do you feel before, during, and after exercising? Do you notice any change? Maybe you're stressed and then you go to the gym, and after your gym session, you no longer feel stressed, you feel positive, or vice versa. I don't know. You tell me. Do you agree or disagree with the quote, the one you just read? "A feeble body wakens the mind" by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Why? Explain your reasons. Okay. So once again, I will give you uh, from 5 to 7 minutes to answer these questions, which I'm gonna leave in the chat. And then again, we're gonna have a discussion. You are very welcome to participate using the microphone or using the chat. Okay. So please take some minutes to answer these questions, and then we will exchange our ideas as a whole. Okay, let's retake. I can see that you have been typing. So I'm looking forward to reading from you soon. Let's see. I think someone else joined. I think it is Gabriela. Okay. So Gabriela, if it's possible, try to rename yourself because you log in as a guest user. Or maybe let us know via chat if it is you or maybe someone else. Please and thank you. Okay, so I can see that Natalia and Diana are still typing. I'm gonna give you some more minutes until 8:25 tops, and then we will check your answers and we will continue with the rest of the agenda. Okay, great. So let's continue. There are some answers in the chat already. So let's remember the question. Do you believe exercise and physical education are important for one's emotions? Why? Explain your reasons. Do you exercise? How often? If so, how do you feel before, during, and after exercising? And the third question is, do you agree or disagree with the quote, a feeble body weakens the mind, unquote, by Jean-Jacques Rousseau? Why? Explain your reasons. So Diana says, number one, yes, because it releases endorphins, reduces stress hormones, and improves sleep. Great, thank you very much for your reply. Now I don't exercise. However, previously I did go to the gym, and I felt that it released a lot of stress. At night, when I got home, I took a shower and I slept much more peacefully. Okay. And when I went to the gym in the mornings, I started the day with more energy. So it's not only about being energetic, it's also about being positive. Maybe it also helped with your mood for the day. Great, thank you. I partially agree. Let's remind the quote, a feeble body weakens the mind. So I partially agree. There is some truth to the idea that physical well-being can influence mental well-being. However, mental strength involves a various factors, not only physical fitness. Okay, that's true. In order to be mentally strong, we also require determination. We've got to make sacrifices sometimes. We have to make rational decisions instead of emotional ones in order to be strong, or in order to have a strong mind. Okay, but in terms of emotion regulation, it is undeniable that physical exercise does have an impact on emotion regulation. Like, for example, you said it, when you went to the gym, you felt better somehow, you felt more energetic. And this energy, not only in terms of physical energy, but also in terms of mental energy, I'm sure it had a positive impact on your day. So great, Diana. Thank you very much for sharing your answers with us. How about Natalia? I can see that you're still typing. So let's wait for some more minutes. Still, okay, great, perfect. Thank you. There she goes. So she says, exercise and PE, or physical education, are indeed important for one's emotions. Regular physical activity has been linked to improve mood, reduce stress, and enhance overall well-being. Exercise stimulates the release of endorphins, which are neurotransmitters that contribute to feelings of happiness and reduce the perception of pain. Thank you very much, Natalia. There is strong, solid, sound scientific evidence that supports the fact that physical exercise contributes to feelings of happiness because it reduces endorphins, and yes, it reduces the perception of pain. Now, she says, I don't often exercise, but when I do it, I feel a positive emotional state. Okay. Um, for example, when I went to the gym, when I used to go to the gym some years ago, right now I don't do physical exercise. I am busy all the time with academic responsibilities and working, but I also felt positive after doing exercise. I had an agenda, I have some goals to meet, like on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, etc. And normally, when after I finished my gym session, I felt positive. I felt very energetic. I felt happy. I felt motivated. I felt proud of myself because it also helped me to tackle negative emotions, okay, regarding self-perception and so on and so forth. So yeah. Number three, regarding the quote, "A feeble body weakens the mind" by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, I agree with the sentiment. Physical and mental health are interconnected, and maintaining a healthy body often supports cognitive functions. That's true. There is a there is a school in Japan as or China. It must be one of these two countries where the principal of that school, that is a high school, he holds a BA in physical education, and part of the daily agenda for the school was to have students go through a series of aerobics. Okay, let's say that they started classes at 6 a.m. So every single day from 6 to 6:30 a.m. the whole school was in the main yard, and they conducted a series of aerobics. Okay, and the one in charge of conducting this series of aerobics was precisely the principal of the school, who had a BA in physical education. The results are interesting, and they go hand in hand with the supporting evidence. Cognitive processes and academic results started to improve little by little. Not only did this have a positive impact, but also students' mental health was positively impacted. So that's great. I go to the gym when I am depressed. Okay, yeah. For some people, it is really good therapy, because it helps us release the stress, like Diana said. Doing exercise helps people to release or to get rid of those negative chemicals that accumulate in the brain related to negative emotions, related to depression, to sadness, and so on and so forth. So there is a great deal of evidence that demonstrates that physical education does have an impact, a positive one mainly, when it comes to emotion regulation. Good. Now let's continue with the slideshow. I have some more questions. Remember, this is aimed at a B2 level, and you're expected to highly participate. That's why I have so many questions. This time the questions are based on a video that we are going to watch, okay? I'm gonna read the questions in advance. Can exercise protect your brain from different conditions like depression, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, etc., and help improve your mood with a long-lasting effect? How is physical activity related with the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the temporal lobe? And maybe why not the brain amygdala? What are some of the effects of exercise in the brain related to emotion balance and thus chemical balance? So we are going to watch this video. Sorry about that. This is precisely what I was telling you about. It is titled The Story Behind China's Viral Dancing School Principal. Okay, so this is the case that I was telling you some minutes before. This is the link to the video in case you want to watch it again later. However, give me just a second. I'm gonna share the questions with you in the chat. Here you are. We're gonna watch the video. And that's it. Okay, so the idea is for you to try to answer those questions based on everything we have been discussing tonight. And then we will continue with the third part of the agenda. Please let me know if you can see the YouTube video on this moment.
Yes.
Now let's try with the sound. Is it working?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's watch it.
这个操场这个根本就不适合我们700多名学生来跑步或者做其他的更加占用地面的一些体育运动。移动到学校的话，在这个动感音乐的这个带动下，孩子肯定喜欢，所以我就跟着去偷学了，就偷学了。觉得跳这个跟原来的广播操啊那个，你觉得？这个比方太好玩，这个比方传的太好玩。好玩。好玩，特别好玩。
Okay, and you can find further evidence and further information about this school and this principal and how, you know, cognitive processes were boosted and possibly impacted. And but let's go back to the questions, okay? Again, can exercise protect your brain from different conditions like depression, Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and help improve your mood with a long-lasting effect? How is physical activity related with the prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the temporal lobe? And what are some of the effects of exercise in the brain related to emotion balance and thus chemical balance? Okay, I don't want you to take a lot of time to answer this question. Maybe you can find some information online. I just wanted to express your ideas on the matter. If you want, if you like, you can support your ideas based on evidence that you find online. If not, don't worry. Okay, just shoot me with your perceptions of this matter. And again, you will have about 6 minutes until 8:40 to answer these questions. We are going to socialize the answers after that, and then we're moving into the next part. Okay, great. So we got some answers in the chat. Thank you, Diana, for your fast reply and participation. You found the information.
I Google it, but I want to share something. My grandmother has had Alzheimer's for a few years, and her therapies include physical activity and also dance therapy and others like that, which have helped that this disease evolve slowly. So I think that is important that and I agree that regular exercise help to reduce the risk of these types of conditions.
Okay, great. Thank you. You said dancing therapy is part of your grandmother's therapy about
Yes.
it. Okay, it's interesting. Yeah, it's important to keep the brain busy, and not only busy but in contact with other people. I think we're gonna watch a video about that, but if not, I highly recommend it. It's a TED Talk, okay? It's about Alzheimer's disease and other mental conditions such as dementia and early dementia and so on and so forth. And according to this research that has been conducted and to many others, um, keeping good personal relationships and interacting with people on a daily basis, if possible, it is highly beneficial and positive for the brain. Because remember, we cannot forget our human nature, and we are social beings. We are social beings by nature, or we are social beings because we need each other. That's a matter of survival. But yes, we humans need a constant interaction with others. And on the other side of the coin, there are some scientific evidence. Sorry, there is some scientific evidence. There are some papers that demonstrate that people who tend to live alone, people who tend to isolate, well, the prompt or the beginnings of dementia, early dementia, and earlier than expected compared to people who do not live alone and who have good relationships and interact with different people on a daily basis. So thank you so much for adding this to your answer. Diana, let's see what you type. Yes, regular exercise is associated with a reduced risk of conditions like depression, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia. It also has a long-lasting mood-enhancing effect due to the release of neurotransmitters and neurotrophic factors. Okay, very important that you mentioned the neurotrophic factors indeed. Number two, exercise stimulates the prefrontal cortex, improving executive functions and cognitive control. So it's important to exercise not only your body, but also your brain. And there are different ways in which we can do it. For example, trying different languages, trying different activities, like trying to play a musical instrument, solving puzzles and crosswords and sudokus, and of course dancing. It all helps with the brain activity. And so different brain areas that are related with cognition, metacognition, memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, and of course emotion regulation. Well, yes, they do have a positive impact on all of this. Physical activity also influences the temporal lobe, which is involved in processing emotions and memories, like I just said before. So that is great. And exercise increases the release of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, contributing to improved mood and emotional balance. It also promotes the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is a very important thing that we are going to watch in a video in some minutes, supporting neural growth, plasticity, brain plasticity, which is In other words, what allows us to learn. Okay, brain plasticity is at its highest maybe during the first years of a person's life. That is to say, early education, childhood, and during the pre-teenage and teenage age. Okay, after some time, even though the brain plasticity is always there, after some times it's more challenging for people to learn things. But the brain plasticity, when it comes to childhood, is at its peak. And overall brain health. Great, thank you very much, Diana, for your response. How about Natalia? Did you get the chance to find some information online? Okay, right, don't worry. Thank you very much for your participation. Okay, she's typing. Let's see. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry. First things first, okay? We're going to continue with the next part of this second session. It's okay. Don't worry, okay? Once again, first things first. So let's move into the next part of today's agenda, which deals with this dichotomy that we have between nature versus nurture, okay? So nature refers to genetics, okay? So we cannot ignore the fact that genetics does play an important role when it comes to emotion regulation and when it comes to inheriting, for example, passing from one generation to another, certain diseases, mental diseases and mental conditions such as depression, ADHD, anxiety, and other types of mental disorders, right? And also, it is a fact that character, personality, and mood is somehow inherited from your parents and it is passed from one generation to another. So this is related to emotions control. Let's say that this amounts to 70%, give or take a few, and the other 30%, this is like the general, this is like the overall, but when it comes to rating different authors, you will find different percentages and different doses. And the other 40 or 30% is given by nurture, okay? That is to say the environment, the interaction that you have with others, the interaction that you have with yourself, the interaction that you have with the environment on a daily basis. That's why, you know what homeostasis is? It's like regulation, okay? Trying to pass a gradient of low concentration, a gradient of high concentration to one of lesser concentration. That's why I put it like this: nature versus nurture. Do they complement each other? Yes, no, let's find out, okay? Again, I have some questions for you. Do you think emotions are inherited or learned or both? Explain your reasons. Are emotions and thus their emotional display, universal? Explain your reasons, okay? Now, before you answer these questions, we are going to watch some videos and we're going to read some information about James Lange theory of emotions, Cannon-Barth theory of emotions, and universality of emotions, okay? I have another question here. What do you understand by homeostasis of emotions in the nature-nurture dichotomy context? All right, so we're going to get started with these 4 questions, okay? First, this one. What do you understand by homeostasis of emotions in the nature-nurture dichotomy context? I have, let's go back to the other questions. Do you think emotions are inherited or learned or both? Okay, let me just change a little bit. Do you think the emotions are inherited, learned, or both? Explain your reasons. And are emotions and thus their emotional display universal? Also, explain your reasons. So we're gonna watch a short video first, or part of the video first. Then we're going to read two different theories. And after that, I'd like you to please answer the questions that are in the chat. Okay, so let's go for the video. Let's see. Okay, just a sec. Okay, so this is about the psychology of emotion. Let's watch this video. Maybe I think we happen to have the time to watch the full video. And then you're going to answer the questions in the chat. Or maybe you can watch the video, and as you watch the video, answer the questions. So I think that the audio from the video is okay. So let's get going.
Professor Dave explains. When I say the word emotion, what comes to mind? You probably think of the different types of emotions you may experience on a day-to-day basis, like happiness, sadness, anger, and excitement. Or maybe you thought of a chart like this, showing different faces displaying various emotions. These are great examples of emotions. But what are emotions? How do we define them? Are emotions learned? Are they consistent across cultures? These are all interesting questions that humans have been thinking about for all of history, and we discussed this to some extent in the biopsychology series. So let's review a bit and then dig a little deeper. Philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, and Descartes believed that emotions are a specific kind of subjective experience. They are a class of feelings distinct and separate from sensory experiences like taste and touch. This idea began to be challenged at the end of the 1800s by psychologist William James and physiologist Carl Lang. Their theory, also known as the James-Lang theory, was that emotions are not sacred feelings that are special and distinct from sensory experiences. Instead, external stimuli, like sensory experiences, lead to physiological reactions that we interpret as an emotion. Emotions, according to this theory, are simply how we interpret our body responding to things in the world. Here's an example. Say you're walking down the street when you see a lion that escaped from the local zoo. When you see the lion, you begin to shake and your heart begins to race. The James-Lang theory suggests that you will only then feel frightened. You feel frightened because you are shaking and your heart is racing, not the other way around. It's the feeling in your body that causes the emotion fear. There are obviously some issues with this theory, one of which is described nicely by scientists Walter Cannon and Philip Bard in the Cannon-Bard theory of emotion. People can have physiological responses without being linked to a specific emotion. Your heart could be racing because you've just been exercising, but you probably don't feel afraid in this situation. In contrast to the James-Lang theory, the Cannon-Bard theory suggests that emotions and the physiological reactions are two separate things that occur at the same time, and one does not cause the other. Today, psychologists generally define emotions as a psychological state involving three distinct components working together: a subjective experience, a physiological response, and a behavioral response. These components work together to create what we experience as emotions. Subjective experience refers to how you as an individual perceive an event, regardless of how it is objectively occurring or how other people perceive it. You might feel excited to start a new job, while your friend might feel terrified about starting the exact same job. In this case, there are differences in how you and your friend perceive the same event. The physiological part of emotion is how your body actually responds to an experience. Is your heart palpitating with fear from starting your new job, or is it beating in excitement? The same physiological response, fast heartbeats, occurs with multiple emotions and will interact with your subjective experience to shape which emotion you feel at a specific time. Finally, the behavioral response is how you actually express emotion. How are you going to express your excitement on your first day at your new job? Are you going to smile because you feel happy, or are you going to laugh with joy instead? All three of these components, subjective experience, physiological response, and behavioral response, work together to create your emotions. One important distinction we must mention before moving on is the difference between emotion and mood. We often use the two words interchangeably in daily life, but psychologists view them as two distinct things. Emotions tend to be short-lived and more intense than moods, and they usually have a specific and identifiable cause. Moods, on the other hand, tend to be more mild than emotions and longer lasting. It's also sometimes hard to determine the specific event that causes a mood. For example, you might feel sad after watching a sad movie or reading a sad book. This sad emotion probably won't last that long, and you know exactly what caused it. If you're in a sad mood, though, you will be feeling sadder for a much longer period of time, and you probably won't know exactly what is making you feel gloomy. Now that we have a better understanding of how psychologists define emotions, let's start digging deeper. Here's an important question. Are emotions universal? Do all cultures have the same emotions and corresponding facial expressions? Charles Darwin thought so. He believed that all humans displayed similar emotions and that we could trace the evolutionary history of emotion across cultures and even across different species. Here is an excerpt from his paper, The Expression of
¿Usted está buscando una residencia permanente para los Estados Unidos y es profesional
the Emotions in Man and Animals? The young and the old of widely different races, both with man and animals, express the same state of mind by the same movements. In other words, he believed that all humans, and even some animals, express emotion in similar ways. Having similar emotional expressions across cultures and species would actually be useful and helpful in avoiding danger. If emotions are similar, you will be able to understand the emotions of other humans and animals, even if you don't speak their language. You can tell that an animal is upset and defensive if it's clawing and hissing, and then know to leave it alone. Or you can tell if another person is getting angry and leave them alone to calm down, even if you don't speak their language. Being able to correctly interpret the emotions of other people and animals allows us to recognize and avoid danger. But was Darwin right? Are emotions universal? Psychologist Paul Ekman tested Darwin's idea to see just how universal emotions are across cultures. He collected a bunch of pictures depicting various emotions and then asked people to match an emotional term to each photo. Here's an example. What emotion is this face showing? Anger, disgust, fear, happiness, sadness, or surprise? Ekman found in his research that 93 to 97% of his participants were able to correctly identify happiness, meaning that happiness was the best recognized emotion. This was followed by surprise, anger, disgust, sadness, and finally fear. For all of these emotions, participants were significantly better than chance at correctly identifying them, meaning that they weren't just guessing. This suggests the validity of universal emotions, but there's just one issue with this study. All of the participants came from cultures that had access to other cultures and facial expressions through things like TV, movies, and magazines. They could have learned to recognize emotions from learning about them through television, meaning that those emotions weren't expressed naturally in their culture. To truly test if emotions are universal, Ekman tested a pre-literate hunter-gatherer culture in Papua New Guinea. This group was totally isolated and had no access to things like Western television and literature, and very few chances for interactions with other cultures. If this isolated group was also able to recognize the emotions on faces, there would be stronger evidence for the universality of emotions. Just like in the prior study, Ekman found that Papua New Guineans were successfully able to identify happiness, surprise, anger, disgust, sadness, and fear. So these emotions are similar across cultures, even in cultures who would not have learned expressions from other cultures. To provide even more evidence for the universality of emotion, certain facial expressions are innate. Congenitally blind athletes who have never visually perceived a facial expression will produce the same facial expressions involving happiness, anger, sadness, disgust, and surprise as sighted athletes. Because these emotional expressions apparently are not learned, this suggests that there are some emotions that are universal and therefore an inherent part of being human. Today, psychologists generally agree upon 6 basic emotions that are universal across cultures, those being sadness, happiness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. But what about more complex emotions like grief or jealousy? Complex emotions are mixtures of the 6 basic emotions. Hate, for example, is defined as a mixture of fear, anger, and disgust. Unlike the basic emotions, complex emotions can differ in how they appear on a person's face and vary between cultures and individuals. Grief, for example, looks very different between cultures. Cultural differences in complex emotions and even the expression of basic emotions has been found time and time again. In the United States, it appears that the culture of honor impacts the expression of anger. In a 1996 study, Southerners displayed more anger, were more physiologically aroused, and were more likely to engage in aggressive behavior than Northerners in response to an insult. Eastern and Western cultures also appear to differ in emotional displays. One 1972 study compared Japanese and American students watching a film depicting a disgusting surgical procedure. The Japanese students were much more stone-faced than American students when watching the film in the presence of an authority figure. Japanese immigrants to the US are also more reactive to stressful situations after being in the US for about a year. This suggests that American culture changes the emotional display of the Japanese immigrants. In general, Westerners value, promote, and experience more high arousal emotions like excitement and irritation than Easterners, who value and promote low arousal emotions like peacefulness and boredom. So, to sum everything up, what do we know about emotions? Well, there do appear to be some basic universal emotions that are consistent across cultures. But culture also affects the display of some emotions, particularly the more complex ones. Like a lot of psychological concepts we will talk about throughout this series, emotions are not as simple as they seem and are subject to influences outside of our bodies, like the cultures we are all a part of. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel for more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making.
Okay, now before you answer the questions, there are 2 ratings that I like us to go through. So they are related to, the theories that were mentioned in the video before, James Lange theory of emotions and the Ken-Bar theory of emotions. So let's read a little bit about each of this. And then I'm just gonna read the first part, like the introduction. Yeah, I'm sharing the links with you for you to read and find extra information. And then you will have some minutes to answer the questions, and then we will go back to the discussion. Here's the second one. There you go. So are you seeing the one about Cannon-Bar theory? What is Cannon-Bar theory? Please let me know.
Yes.
Okay. Great. So the Cannon-Bar theory of emotion proposed the idea of the fight or flight response. Its leading question: when faced with a potentially dangerous scenario, what do your instincts tell you to do? The Cannon-Bar theory states that the lower part of the brain, also called the thalamus, controls your experience of emotion, At the same time, the higher part of the brain, also called the cortex, controls the expression of emotion. It is believed that these two parts of the brain react simultaneously. So which one is it going to be? The fight or the flight response. This theory was proposed in the 1920s and the early 1930s by Walter B. Cannon and Philip Barth. This is why this is known as the Cannon-Barth theory, okay? It's also referred to as the fight or flight response. And, well, there you go, okay? You can find some extra information about this theory. And now let's move on to the James Lange theory of emotion. Can you see the James Lange theory of emotion in your screens right now? Please let me know.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the James Lange theory of emotion suggests that physical changes in the body happen first, okay? Physical and somehow physiological changes too, which then leads to the experience of emotion. So first, the physiological part, and then the cognitive or the emotional part. Essentially, emotions step from your interpretation of your physical sensations. For example, your heart beating wildly, which is a physiological response, would lead you to realize that you are afraid. So it's like reading your body first and then determining the kind of emotion that it is. But not always. When your heart is beating really hard or wildly, it means that you are afraid. Maybe you are in love. Maybe you are excited about something. Maybe you are surprised. Maybe you are angry at a person or with a situation, and so on. Okay. Now, this theory is one of the earliest attempts to explain what causes emotions. Proposed independently by psychologist William James and psychologist Carl Lange, the James Lange theory of emotions suggested that emotions occur as a result of physiological reactions to events. So it's kind of like the other way around. In other words, this theory proposes that people have a physiological response to environmental stimuli. This is nurture versus your nature, and that their interpretation of that physical response is what leads to an emotional experience. So we could say that an emotional experience is a mixture of the nature versus nurture and plus the physiological or the physical response to such external or internal stimuli. And then depending on how you perceive it, you will feel like this or you will feel like that. And thus you have a physical response, which is like the expression of the emotion, okay? And here you have more example and extra information for you to go through it. I mean, you don't have to read all of that. It's just part of the information, and try and answer the questions. Again, do you think emotions are inherited, learned, or both? Explain your reasons. Are emotions and thus their emotional display universal? Explain your reasons. There is another question. What do you understand by homeostasis of emotions in the nature versus nurture dichotomy context? All right, these are kind of deep questions. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes, okay, for you to answer these 3 questions. Then we're going to socialize your responses. And after that, we will continue with Jordan Peterson, a very well known psychologist around the world, okay? And there is one final question, but we're gonna leave it for um, after the discussion, okay? So once again, please, I'd like you to answer the questions that are in the chat. What do you understand by homeostasis of emotions in the nature-nurture dichotomy context? Do you think emotions are inherited, learned, or both? Explain your reasons. And are emotions and thus their emotional display universal? Please explain your reasons too. 10 minutes, dear people, for you to answer these questions, and then we're going to exchange your responses. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. Let's see, you're still typing. First question, what do you understand by homeostasis of emotions in the nature versus nurture dichotomy context? Natalia says, balance in emotional experiences influenced by both. Yes, that is precisely what homeostasis means, a balance, okay? A gradient from a bigger percentage of concentration to a one with a lesser percentage of concentration. Once again, I said according to the evidence, according to science, according to the respective literature, 60 to 70% is determined by genetics, that is to say nature, and the other 30 or 40%, depending on the author, that represents nurture, okay? That is to say the environment, the way we interact with the environment, the way we interact with others, the way we interact with ourselves, and so on and so forth. So that's precisely what I hope you answer, is a balance in emotional experience influenced by both genetic factors and environmental influences. In that sense, homeostasis implies a dynamic equilibrium sought by the body and mind in regulating emotions. Perfect. Thank you very much, Natalia, for your contribution. Okay. So, okay, we're going to go for the second reply, Natalia, and then we will go for Diana's responses. Natalia says, I think emotions can be both inherited and learned. Again, this is nature versus nurture dichotomy. In this moment, I'm teaching my 2-year-old son how to deal with his emotions. And it is like he comes with the basic ones. That is to say, happiness, sadness, surprise, anger, disgust, and fear. And it's like he comes with the basic ones and he's trying to learn the other ones, the mixed ones. So it's important to teach children, to educate people from a very young age about the different emotions. It is important to tell them that it is okay to feel anger, that it is okay to feel surprised, that it is okay to feel happiness, sadness, and so on. But in the same fashion, it is important to teach them how to control those emotions and how to regulate those emotions. Great. Diana says, first I had to remember what homeostasis is. Yes, I know it's a tricky concept. Homeostasis is defined as a self-regulating process by which a living organism can maintain internal stability while adjusting to changing external conditions. So maybe homeostasis of emotions refers to the balance or stability of emotional experiences, yes, influenced by both genetic factors, nature, and environmental influences, nurture. Nailed it, perfect, thank you very much. I think that emotions are a combination of both inherited or genetic predispositions and learned, shaped by experiences and culture. Yes, perfect. Yes, maybe I think that the basic emotions are considered universal across cultures, just as we saw in the video. So maybe the 6 basic emotions are deeply rooted in our human mind, in our human brain, in our human blueprint. If we consider the evolutionary process that we have gone through, or if we consider the evolutionary brain, okay? So we are a cumulus of experiences from the cavemen, and this is something that has been passed from generation to generation. So we come with a predisposition of genes, right? But this is only 60–70%. It means that we can modulate our emotions, we can shape our emotions, and we can somehow teach these emotions and change these emotions. It has been really difficult. Yes, I can tell. It is a difficult thing, but it is a matter of being patient because emotions are indeed something teachable, you know, they can be taught. But again, we have to be patient with people, not only with babies, but also with all people in general. Okay, perfect contributions. thank you very much to the both of you for your participation. Now, let's go for the next question. This one is even more interesting in my perspective. Well, I designed all of these questions, and I think that this next question is more interesting than the ones before. And Jordan Peterson, I don't know if you have read about him or if you know anything about him, but he is a great psychologist, one that is really worth reading. And also Edgar Cabanas, okay, he is from Spain. He's a Spanish psychology. I think both of them have a PhD on psychology, so this is solid evidence, okay? So based on everything we have discussed up to this point on this section, we're gonna watch a video by Jordan Peterson on how to control emotions. And then the question is, can emotions be hacked and controlled? You tell me. So let's watch the video. Oh my God. I can't believe this video has been removed. Okay, let's try. Jordan Peterson on controlling emotions. Jesus. Just a sec. No, maybe the first one, but it was a shorter version. So we are going to watch part of it. Okay, yeah.
The first question might be, why should you even?
I think yes, this is the video, but it's a longer version of it. Okay, the original one was like 5-6 minutes, but it's okay. We still have the time to maybe watch this to the fullest. Okay. So here's the link in the chat. In any case, I will play from my screen. It's really interesting. And the question is, can emotions be hacked and controlled? Let me just type it in the chat for you. We're gonna watch the video, and after that, we will continue with your answers. Here you go.
Bother improving yourself? And I think the answer to that is something like, so you don't suffer any more stupidly than you have to. And maybe so others don't have to either. It's something like that. You know, like there's a real injunction at the bottom of it. It's not some casual self-help doctrine. It's that if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it, and in a big way, and so will the people around you. Now, and you could say, well, I don't care about that, but that's actually not true. You actually do care about that, because if you're in pain, you will care about it. And so you do care about it, even if it's just that negative way, you know. It's very rare that you can find someone who's in excruciating pain who would ever say, well, it would be no better if I was out of this. Sort of pain is one of those things that brings the idea that it would be better if it didn't exist along with it. It's incontrovertible. So you get your act together so that there isn't any more stupid pain around you than necessary. Well, so then the question might be, well, how would you go about getting your act together? And the answer to that, and this is a phenomenological idea too, it's something like, look around for something that bothers you and see if you can fix it. Now, I often tell people too, fix the things you repeat every day, because people tend to think of those as trivial, right? You get up, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, you know, you have your routines that you go through every day. Well, those probably constitute 50% of your life. And people think, well, they're mundane, I don't need to pay attention to them. It's like, no, that's exactly wrong. The things you do every day, those are the most important things you do. Hands down. All you have to do is do the arithmetic. Let's say you go into you can do this in a room. It's quite fun to do it just when you're sitting in a room, like a room, maybe your bedroom. You can sit there and just sort of meditate on it and think, okay, if I wanted to spend 10 minutes making this room better, what would I have to do? And you have to ask yourself that, right? It's not a command, it's like a genuine question. And things will pop out in the room that you like, there's a stack of papers over there that's kind of bugging you, and you know that maybe a little order there would be a good thing. And there's some rubbish behind your computer monitor that you haven't attended to for like 6 months, and the room would be slightly better if it was a little less dusty and the cables weren't all tangled up the same way. And like, if you allow yourself just to consider the expanse in which you exist at that moment, there'll be all sorts of things that'll pop out in it that you could just fix. And, I might say, well, if you were coming to see me for psychotherapy, this easiest thing for us to do first would just be to get you to organize your room. You think, well, is that psychotherapy? And the answer is, well, it depends on how you conceive the limits of your being. And I would say, start where you can start. If something announces itself to you, which is a strange way of thinking about it, as in need of repair, that you could repair, then, hey, fix it. You fix 100 things like that, your life will be a lot different. See, part of what artists do, for example, when Van Gogh paints a room and you look at it glowing, he's trying to show you what's beyond your perception of the room. And I mean this technically, like the way that your visual system is set up is that whenever memory and presumption can replace direct perception, it will, because it's simpler. So you literally see what you expect to see. And if what you see is dull and drab and boring and pointless and uninspiring, then that's you. It's not what's there. And what the artist does when he or she re-represents that mundane reality is to remind you of what's behind it, the potential that's there. And so what I'm suggesting to people is that they take the potential that's right in front of them. It's like, okay, and here's the rule. You're aiming up. There's something that you could change, that you would change. That might be a very small thing. Could, well, that's within the grasp of your power. Would is within the grasp of your will. To combine those two things might be a very small shift. You might only be willing to make a very tiny step forward. It's like, fine, good enough. Make a tiny step forward. And that makes you a slight bit stronger than you were before. And then the next step can be slightly larger. And it's the path of humility. If people look at their lives, it's a very interesting thing to do. I like the idea of the room, because you can do that at the drop of a hat. Go back to where you live and sit down and think, okay, I'm going to make this place better for half an hour. What should I do? You have to ask, and things will just pop up like mad. And it's partly because your mind is a very strange thing. As soon as you give it a name, a genuine aim, it'll reconfigure the world in keeping with that aim. That's actually how you see to begin with. And so if you set it a task, especially, you have to be genuine about it, which is why you have to bring your thoughts and emotions together, and then you have to get them in your body so you're acting consistently. You have to be genuine about the aim. But once you aim, the world will reconfigure itself around that aim, which is very strange. Be careful what you aim at, right? What you aim at determines the way the world manifests itself to you. And so if the world is manifesting itself in a very negative way, one thing to ask is, are you aiming at the right thing? Now, I'm not trying to reduce everybody's problems to an improper aim. People get cut off at the knees for all sorts of reasons. They get sick, they have accidents. There's a random element to being, that's for sure. And so you don't want to take anything, even that particular phrase, too far. You want to bind it with the fact that random things do happen to people, but it's still a great thing to ask. And so what that means is, well, you get up in the morning and you're excited about the day, you're ready to go. And so as far as I can tell, what you do is you specify your long-term ideal. Maybe you also specify a place you want to stay the hell away from so that you're terrified to fail as well as excited about succeeding, because that's also useful. You specify your goal. You do that in some sense as a unique individual. You want to specify goals that make you say, oh, if that could happen as a consequence of my efforts, it would clearly be worthwhile. Okay, well, this is what I'm aiming for. How does that instantiate itself day to day, week to week, month to month? And that's where something like a schedule can be unbelievably useful. Google Calendar. It's like, make a damn schedule and stick to it. Okay, so what's the rule with the schedule? It's not a bloody prison. That's the first thing that people do wrong. They say, well, I don't like to follow a schedule. It's like, well, what kind of schedule are you setting up? Well, I have to do this, then I have to do this, then I have to do this, you know, and then I just go play video games, because who wants to do all these things that I have to do? It's like, wrong. Set the damn schedule up so that you have the day you want. That's the trick. It's like, okay, I've got tomorrow. If I was going to set it up so it was the best possible day I could have, practically speaking, what would it look like? Maybe 20% of your day has to be responsibility and obligation, or maybe it's more than that, depending on how far behind you are. But even that, you can ask yourself, okay, well, I've got these responsibilities. I have to schedule the damn things in. What's the right ratio of responsibility to reward? And you can ask yourself that, just like you'd negotiate with someone who is working for you. It's like, okay, you got to work tomorrow. Okay, so I want you to work tomorrow. And you might say, okay, well, what are you going to do for me that makes it likely that I'll work for you? Well, you could ask yourself that, you know. So maybe you do an hour of responsibility and then you play a video game for 15 minutes. I don't know, whatever turns your crank, man. But, you know, you have to negotiate with yourself and not tyrannize yourself. Like you're negotiating with someone that you care for, that you would like to be productive and have a good life. And that's how you make the schedule. It's like, and then you look at the day and you think, well, if I had that day, that'd be good. Great. You know, and you're useless and horrible, so you'll probably only hit it with about 70% accuracy, but that beats the hell out of 0, right? And if you hit it even with 50% accuracy, another rule is, well, aim for 51% the next week, or 50.5% for God's sake, or because you're going to hit that position where things start to loop back positively and spiral you upward. And so that's one way that you can work on your conscientiousness, is to plan a life you'd like to have. We're built for a burden, and we're not happy without that burden, and we want to find the one that suits us. And that's difficult. It's part of the adventure of life to seek out the burden that suits you. But when you have that, then yes, then hopefully you're operating in harmony with the requirements of those around you. You make yourself a reasonably morally respectable individual. And so now you're not blinded as much by your own proclivity for uselessness and malevolence. And then you can integrate all that. You can integrate all those rules. And that's the beginning of the development of character. And then you can embody the union of the rules. It's something like that. Well, the mission is the improvement of your character, the constant improvement of your character. And I think a lot of that's done in dialogue with your conscience. It's like your conscience is always telling you, Socrates said this thousands of years ago, your conscience is always telling you what you shouldn't be doing. And one of the things Socrates said was what discriminated him from the run-of-the-mill person, and why perhaps we still know of him so many thousands of years later, was that when his conscience told him not to do something, he didn't do it. He stopped saying the things that he shouldn't have been saying, and he stopped doing the things he shouldn't have been doing. And that's a start, you know. That's a discipline, I would say. That's the ability to follow a certain kind of intrinsic discipline. And maybe that's merely the cessation of evil. That's not exactly the same as the pursuit of positive good. Let's say you haven't got there yet, but that's a start. You clear away the obstacles from your vision by ceasing to engage in those activities you know to be wrong. And then the world starts to lay itself out in more pristine form. And then maybe you can start to apprehend what would be positively good instead of merely not wrong.
Okay. Oh my God, it's 9:40. Sorry. I got lost in time, and I thought that this session was going to finish at 10 past 10. Is 30 minutes after that. So let's go straight with the question. Let's check your answers. Can emotions be hacked and controlled? You tell me. What do you think? Can emotions be hacked and controlled? As you answered the question, very quickly, let's go through two more important aspects, okay? Let's catch some Z's. It's the next part of today's session, and it deals with the importance of sleeping, okay? So I want to start by asking you the following questions. How many hours do you sleep a night? Do you take naps? If so, for how long? Do you think sleeping and emotion regulation are connected? How? Explain your reasons, okay? And then after that, we're going to go for the final part, which deals with a little bit of philosophy of emotions, okay? And we're gonna watch a video by he is a doctor on psychology, if I'm not mistaken, is Matthew Walker. He's the author of the book Why We Sleep, and he's got some really interesting information about the importance of sleeping and emotion regulation. Okay, so let's answer these questions very quickly. How many hours do you sleep at night? Do you take a nap? Yes, no. If so, for how long? And then the last one. Do you think sleeping and emotion regulation are connected? Please. These questions, I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. They are not difficult questions. 5 minutes for you to answer. Then we will watch the video and then we will go for the philosophy of emotions. And also, please remember, can emotions be hacked and controlled? So there is an extra question there in the chat. Okay, I saw a reaction. You ready?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Okay, let's check. So, did anybody get to answer these questions? How many hours do you sleep at night? Do you take naps? If so, how often or for how long? And do you think sleeping and emotion regulation are connected? How? Explain your reasons. So Diana says, can emotions be hacked or controlled? I think the control is more in our reaction than in the emotion that is produced internally. Okay, yes, we can control how we react, yeah, to stimuli. But don't you think that emotions can be hacked and controlled? I mean, consider, for example, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling under the weather, you're feeling blue, okay? Um, remember what we said about chocolate and about other nutritions, another micronutrients, sorry? So what happens if you're feeling blue? What happens if you're feeling highly depressed and you start eating chocolate, and more chocolate? Don't you think that somehow this emotion can be hacked and somehow you can control it and of course control the reaction? Well, next question is, how many hours do you sleep a night? 6 to 8 hours. Do you take naps? If so, for how long? No, I don't regularly take naps. And do you think sleeping and emotion regulation are connected? Yes, they are connected. How? How do you think sleeping and emotion regulation are connected, Diana? And how about Natalia and how about Gabriela? Well, as you answer these questions, let's watch this video in a series of 3 videos. This one is by Matthew Walker, and here is what happens to your body and brain if you don't get sleep. Okay, this is the first video on a series of 3. We're not gonna watch the 3 videos, we're just gonna watch this one to see what is the positive, what is the negative impact when it comes to sleeping deprivation and the emotional regulation and emotion balance. Okay, emotional balance and imbalance, of course. So there is a link to the video. In any case, we are going to watch it from my screen, and then we will continue with the last part, which deals with philosophy of emotions.
My name is Matthew Walker. I am a professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, and I am the author of the book, Why We Sleep. We certainly know that a lack of sleep will actually prevent your brain from being able to initially make new memories. So it's almost as though without sleep, the memory inbox of the brain shuts down and you can't commit new experiences to memory. So those new incoming informational emails are just bounced and you end up feeling as though you're amnesic. You can't essentially make and create those new memories. We also know that a lack of sleep will lead to an increased development of a toxic protein in the brain that is called beta amyloid, and that is associated with Alzheimer's disease, because it is during deep sleep at night when a sewage system within the brain actually kicks into high gear and it starts to wash away this toxic protein, beta amyloid. So if you're not getting enough sleep each and every night, more of that Alzheimer's related protein will build up. The more protein that builds up, the greater your risk of going on to develop dementia in later life. What are the effects of sleep deprivation on the body? Well, there are many different effects. Firstly, we know that sleep deprivation affects the reproductive system. We know that men who are sleeping just 5 to 6 hours a night have a level of testosterone which is that of someone 10 years their senior. So a lack of sleep will age you by almost a decade in terms of that aspect of virility and wellness. We also know that a lack of sleep impacts your immune system. So after just one night of 4 to 5 hours of sleep, there is a 70% reduction in critical anti-cancer fighting immune cells called natural killer cells. And that's the reason that we know that short sleep duration predicts your risk for developing numerous forms of cancer. And that list currently includes cancer of the bowel, cancer of the prostate, as well as cancer of the breast. In fact, the link between a lack of sleep and cancer is now so strong that recently the World Health Organization decided to classify any form of nighttime shift work as a probable carcinogen. So in other words, jobs that may induce cancer because of a disruption of your sleep-wake rhythms. We also know that a lack of sleep impacts your cardiovascular system, because it is during deep sleep at night that you receive this most wonderful form of effectively blood pressure medication. Your heart rate drops, your blood pressure goes down. If you're not getting sufficient sleep, you're not getting that reboot of the cardiovascular system. So your blood pressure rises. You have, if you're getting 6 hours of sleep or less, a 200% increased risk of having a fatal heart attack or a stroke in your lifetime. There is a global experiment that is performed on 1.6 billion people twice a year, and it's called daylight savings time. And we know that in the spring, when we lose 1 hour of sleep, we see a subsequent 24% increase in heart attacks the following day. Another question perhaps is, what is the recycle rate of a human being? How long can we actually last without sleep before we start to see declines in your brain function or even impairments within your body? And the answer seems to be about 16 hours of wakefulness. Once you get past 16 hours of being awake, that's when we start to see mental deterioration and physiological deterioration in the body. We know that after you've been awake for 19 or 20 hours, your mental capacity is so impaired that you would be as deficient as someone who is legally drunk behind the wheel of a car. So if you were to ask me what is the recycle rate of a human being, it does seem to be about 16 hours, and we need about 8 hours of sleep to repair the damage of wakefulness. Wakefulness essentially is low-level brain damage.
All right, there you go. Now, to finish very quickly, I'm sorry once again about timing. I was convinced that this session was to be finished at 10 past 10, but no, that's 30 minutes after the given time. Hold your horses is the expression in English. I just decided to modify a little bit, and I put it in parentheses. Hold your philosophical horses. So we are going to, okay, sorry, I just made a mistake with the order of the slideshow. These questions are related to the session before. What chemicals are released by the brain during sleep time and how they affect your emotional and cognitive balance? Well, the chemical that is released is beta amyloid, okay? And it affects your mental processes, your cognitive balance, your emotional balance, because it is the beginning of early dementia and other related issues such as Alzheimer's disease. What's the role that sleeping plays in your emotional and in your emotional balance and imbalance? We're going to skip this question and let's just focus on the last part. Hold your philosophical horses. So we're going to be talking about Stoicism, okay, and the Stoics. Let's start by paying attention to this quote by Marcus Aurelius. If you're distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Okay, so Marcus Aurelius was the one who said this. So we're going to be dealing a little bit with this Stoicism school of philosophy. And to do so, let's just finish with a video. And there is one question that, of course, I'd like you to answer. Just to finish, let me just copy it from my lesson plan, which is here. Okay, simply work on a list of the things that you are in control of and can change, and a list of the things that you are not in control of and that you can change, okay? This is important in terms of the Stoicism school of philosophy, because there are external and internal things that we cannot control. There are certain variables that we cannot control, right? So the idea, it's for us to somehow brainstorm those things that we are in control of and those things that are definitely beyond our hands, right? And accepting that there are things that are beyond our control, it's somehow a motive for you to celebrate and for you to be happy about. When you start accepting things in life, when you start accepting certain facts in life, you suffer less than when you live in eternal denial. You know, the grief phases, denial is the most painful one and is the one that lasts for longer compared to the others. So let's watch this video a little bit. As you watch it, please try to work on a list of the things that you are in control of and can change, and also a list of the things that you are not in control of and that you can change. Let's watch the video. I had some other interesting quotes that I just want to share with you. What you are in control of is what makes you happy, whereas what you are not in control of is what makes you sad. And emotion can be the enemy. If you give in to your emotion, you lose yourself. You must be at one with your emotions because the body always follows the mind. This was said by Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was the Kung Fu fighter. Not only Bruce Lee was a Kung Fu fighter, but he also founded his own philosophical school, Okay, Bruce Lee was one of the strongest men that ever lived, not only in terms of his body, but also in terms of his mind. Unfortunately, he died at a very young age because of health-related complications. I think it was cancer or something like that, that unfortunately killed him. So let's watch this final video on Stoicism, and that's it. Okay, we're just about to finish.
Imagine being the most powerful man on earth.
Link to the video, and then we will just finish. Remember the list of things, okay? Please, you can do it in the chat.
Yes, that means if you want to call up Nicki Minaj to shake her ass for you all night, while drinking boatloads of champagne and eating a prime ribeye steak, then it's all yours. And if any man had the audacity to try and speak out against you, then they'd shortly hear the loud footsteps of an elite army approaching their house as they sleep. I mean, it's quite difficult to imagine that much absolute power, right? But if we take a look back onto history, we can see that many men actually had this position of power, and a person who you may have never even heard of, named Marcus Aurelius, was one of them. Emperor Marcus Aurelius was at one point in time the most powerful man on earth. He was the commander and emperor of the Roman Empire, and had an army that was feared in all corners of the world. And if he wanted, he could have sex with any woman he desired, and live a life of just getting pissed with the lads and partying like an animal for the rest of his life. Now, if we take a look back onto history, it's clear to see that many kings and emperors couldn't handle such power. They become corrupt. They become slaves to their own greed and hunger for more. Emperor Marcus Aurelius was different. He was the emperor of Rome and was very aware of the fact that unlimited selfish pleasure was available at a moment's notice. But as opposed to many of his predecessors and counterparts, Marcus actually refrained from many of the pleasures that a usual man would have taken advantage of if they was in his position of power. I mean, Marcus turned away from orgies, the excessive use of alcohol, and the cruel sex scenes in the Colosseum where the Roman elite went for entertainment. He wrote and documented all about his struggles with power in his memoirs that were never meant to be released to the public, which are known as Meditations. Meditations has now gone on to become a key piece of work and insight into the 2,000 years old philosophy of Stoicism. A philosophy that has radically changed my life. What is at the core of the Stoic philosophy is that life is split into two main categories: things that are in our control and things that are not in our control. And what the Stoic philosophers teach us is that ultimately in life, most things are simply not in our control. Things such as our family, our friends, our partners, the economy, the political landscape, and our inevitable journey as humans towards death. Yes, by all means we can influence these matters, but even if we do everything right, our boss can still fire us, our girlfriend can still cheat on us, and our businesses, no matter how well structured they are, can always still collapse. And at the end of the day, there is nothing that we can do to exclude this misfortune. Now, I know this sounds a bit depressing and pessimistic, but this ultimately is what is at the core of Stoic philosophy. The sooner we realize that there are many aspects of our life that we can't control, this ironically is what liberates us. And the sooner we come to terms with it, the sooner we can shift our mindset and perspective onto things that are in our control. Factors such as our opinions, our actions, or in other words, the position we take towards the world around us. According to the Stoics and Marcus Aurelius, what we should focus on are the things that are within our control and disregard the things that are not in our control. For example, as a business owner, you cannot control how the market will react to your products or services. But what you can control is the level of research that you conduct to maximize the chances of it succeeding in the marketplace. You can control the quality and delivery of your product and service, which in essence, if conducted properly, will reduce the chances of a bad response from the marketplace. But notice how I refer to the probability of things and not in guarantees, because ultimately the results are not up to us. But nevertheless, we as humans can decide what position to take in regards to the situation. When we come to terms and accept that a lot of aspects in life are not in our control, such as the possibility of getting hit by a bus tomorrow morning, then we are able to reach a state of inner peace. We can achieve this quiet and calm mind that can act in a logical and rational way to help us make better life choices. And this is what Stoicism guides you to do. It focuses you and your mind to approach life in a logical and rational way. We shouldn't act against the natural course of things, but embrace it. This principle is heavily highlighted in the book The Obstacle is the Way, which highlights the point that facing challenging obstacles is the true path to reach the goals of your journey. Picture it like climbing a mountain. There are many aspects that are not in our control with climbing, such as the weather on the journey, the terrain of our climb, and the low levels of oxygen in the air, and that's just to name a few. These things are not in our control, but by no means does this mean that we should not climb the mountain and give in. But if we know that these things will prove to be obstacles on our journey and they are not in our control, then we know that we need to shift our mindset on aspects that we can control. So in this case, we can't control these aspects of the climb up the mountain, but we can plan our journey with detail, such as studying the forecast and weather patterns, and ensure that we're equipped with adequate gear and clothing to deal with the situation, which will increase our chances of success. This way of thinking is what allows our human reasoning to control our emotions. The goal of climbing a mountain can seem overwhelming, but it's not the emotion itself that decides our mood, but it's the position we take towards that emotion. This Stoic way of thinking is quite therapeutic because it not only makes you more aware of your emotions, but it allows you to deal with them once they overwhelm you. And you're able to deal with them with logic and reasoning. This will allow you to not get overwhelmed by your emotions and help you to keep them in check. Marcus Aurelius was confronted daily with all sorts of situations and problems. And remember, he was the emperor of the Roman Empire, one of the biggest empires that the human civilization has ever seen. So he had to face some pretty tough problems, but before he would start his day, he would mentally prepare himself for these confrontations. He famously stated that as a human being, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Once you realize this, you will find true strength. And this is a philosophy that you can grab on whenever you need it in life. In life, you are always going to face obstacles and unforeseen circumstances, but this should not hinder your journey towards your goal. Take a step back and use the Stoic approach. Identify what is not in your control, i.e. your obstacles, and what is in your control, i.e. your thoughts and actions, and concentrate your forces on this. Simplify and think with logic and reasoning. What is it that you can do to increase the chances of overcoming the obstacle? When we put it into perspective, life is actually quite short, and that's why it's important to point our life energy towards essential and important things and leave unimportant things to just be. Let the philosophy of Stoicism enter your life, as it can be one of the most valuable weapons in your arsenal to give our lives a sense of direction, so we don't lose ourselves on this journey of life.
Okay, and that's it. So, did you manage to write the list of things you are in control of and the list of things that you are not in control of? Let's see. Okay, Natalia is typing. How about Diana? Did you write your list?
Not yet, but I can mention some of them. Some things that maybe I can control are in my opinions, my actions, my decisions, my reactions, my responses, my attitude, and some things that are not in my control are maybe the others' opinions and actions, external events, the weather, the economy, and something that I check in the video, our inevitable journey towards death.
Okay, Diana, perfect. Thank you very much. I think it was a very complete list of things that you are in control of and things that you're not in control of. Now that you mentioned death, for example, this is a sensible topic that not many people are open to talk about. And when people normally think of death, they feel anxious, they feel nervous, they feel depressed, they feel different negative emotions, let's put it like that, because again, they live in denial. They don't want to accept the fact that death is something that we cannot change. It's something that is part of the life cycle, and people suffer. People suffer because they are so, tightly bound to the idea of life that they forget that death is also living, And so when you accept that you are not in control of death, you never know when it is going to come. When you accept this fact, well, you kind of no longer suffer because you accept it as a fact and as something that is inevitable, right? And the same principle applies for many other things. Can you control death? No, it will come for us sooner or later for everybody because it's part of the life cycle. What you can control then is how you react towards the idea of death and towards this natural phenomenon, which is death itself. And once again, it happens, or the same principle might apply to different things in life. Can you control the weather? No, you cannot control the weather. What you control, for example, is maybe be prepared for rain. So it is a good idea for you to always carry an umbrella with you, just to be prepared. So there are things that you can control, but those things that you cannot control, try to see the silver lining. How can you somehow, from the things that you can control, not be affected by those things that you are not in control of? So thank you very much for your intervention, Diana. Now, Natalia is still typing, so let's wait for her to finish her opinion on this, and then we will finish. As she types her ideas, one final reminder, in the email that I sent you some days ago, there was a link for you to evaluate me. Okay, and I'm talking about this third link. It says link to evaluate the workshop and the teacher's performance. So this is a Google form that won't take you more than 5 minutes. I would highly appreciate if you could evaluate my performance and also the workshop performance in terms of the 10 different criteria that are considered there. Okay, it is done in a Likert scale. Let me show you. And the idea is that you please provide an evaluation of my performance and of the registration emotion and of the workshop itself. Was it interesting? Is it important for your life? Yes, no. Okay, so it says emotional online workshop evaluation for participants. As the participant of this online workshop, you will evaluate the workshop itself and the role as a pedagogical mediator of the teacher. To do so, you will assess your teacher's performance based on 10 criteria using a Likert scale as follows. Mark your answer based on a Likert scale where number 1 represents completely disagree, number 2 disagree, number 3 neutral, number 4 agree, and number 5 completely agree. So you simply enter your full name, your email, and there are 10 criteria in total. Criteria number 1, techno-pedagogical arrangement. Please read the description and you evaluate the performance. Criteria number 2, knowledge management. Criteria number 3, possibilities for language learning. Criteria number 4, pedagogical skills. Criteria number 5, use of educational technology. Criteria number 6, communication skills. Criteria number 7, collaboration skills. Criteria number 8, cognition skills. Criteria number 9, metacognition skills. Criteria number 10, participation. And there is one final part here at the bottom of this form in case you want to add extra observations. Okay, in terms of criterion number 7, collaboration skills, it says the teacher effectively fosters teamwork and cooperation among participants, consistently promoting a collaborative learning environment. Well, we didn't have the chance to arrange small groups because of the number of participants who attended to the 2 sessions. I know that some of you were really busy and some of you are really busy right now. So I decided to go for individual participation only. Try to consider this when it comes to evaluating criterion number 7. Okay, so let's read Natalia's answers, Natalia's contribution on the chat. She says, additionally to what Diana said, I think I can control self-care. Yes, that is important, okay, to prioritize yourself, your own being. So it's important to prioritize activities that contribute to mental, emotional health. For example, you cannot control external stimuli, but you can control your eating habits, your sleeping habits. You can control the exercise that you do on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, etc. And these are definitely things that you can do to improve your mental well-being and so on, okay? And I cannot control other actions. For example, my baby's father decision of not being present in his life. Yes, okay, so I have to accept and try to continue without a father figure. Okay, yes, it is. Thank you very much for having shared this personal aspect of your life with us. This is definitely a variable that you cannot be in control of. However, what you are in control of is how you react to that fact. So he decided not to be in your little boy's life, but what are you going to do about it? Are you going to live in eternal denial? Or what decisions are you going to make not only for yourself, but also for your baby? So accepting that fact, I think, is a very brave and important step, which you can take in order to not suffer because of that decision anymore, and in order to somehow try to supply the needs of your baby. Okay, so thank you very much for sharing this. It's very important, and it is definitely highly related to emotions. I can control how to feel about it. Yes. Okay. And now that you know different aspects about emotion regulation and emotion control, you can start working on all of these aspects, okay, in order to be stronger every day and in order to make important decisions that will not only help you, but also your baby when it comes to emotion regulation and emotion control. Okay, so Natalia is typing her final ideas. I don't know, maybe Diana would like to add something else. We're just waiting for Natalia to finish, and then we're gonna call it a day, okay? That's gonna be the end of our workshop on emotions. Maybe we could have 5 more different sessions, but my instructions were only 2. I have been reading about Stoicism. That's a very interesting philosophical school, and it's definitely very enlightening when it comes to see in a broader perspective, a different scenario, a different possibility when it comes to emotion control. So it's great that you're reading about this. Everybody should read about this. We're humans. We are emotional beings, and that is the main reason why I decided to work on this workshop, because we need to understand our human nature, a niche that's very deep, okay, when it comes to emotion control. Great. So Diana and Natalia, once again, I cannot thank you enough for your willingness to participate in this workshop. It's difficult to find people who are committed like you, plus the other people who attended the first session. I understand that because of many reasons, the others could not be here tonight, and the rest of the people who enrolled in this workshop could not attend the first session, neither the second session, but you could make it to the 2 sessions. I know that, for example, Natalia was working on Thursday evening. Still, she participated actively in the workshop. I know that Diana has many responsibilities to attend to. Still, you participated. So once again, thank you very much for your commitment and for your participation. I will share all the material with you. I have been sharing part of the material, but I will send you an email with all the material that I use for this presentation, for this workshop. Maybe it can be of further help in your lives, or maybe it could be of further help in someone's life that you maybe consider might need this workshop. Okay, so that's all from me tonight. I don't know about German, but it sounds like an interesting title. So that's all from me tonight. Diana and Natalia, thank you very much once again for your attention and participation. Please don't forget to, okay, that's the German word for the, okay. That's important. Yes, those preconceptions are important. Great. Thank you very much, Diana and Natalia. That's all for tonight. That's all for me. Sleep tight. Please remember to conduct the evaluation, okay? And the link is there in the chat, and I also send you an email. Now, thank you very much to the both of you. Night, night, and take care.